All right, guys, welcome in and a very happy Friday, possibly the last Friday when it comes to the NBA tip-off shows. We've got a game 4 here tonight, elimination time in the NBA Finals here as the Boston Celtics up 3-0 at this particular point. The Dallas Mavericks facing a 0-156 in NBA history trend right now. I would say double R, 1L, Steve Merril. That is a little bit much to overcome when your superstar can barely walk. And then once the pain meds wear off, he's usually no good in the second half. But this could be it here, Merrill. Down 3-0 here to the Celtics. There's a few bets and I think a few ways that we can approach this game here tonight. I do find, and let's start with the odds on where this thing opened. It's been a fascinating trip here. From the opening numbers in game 1 to where we landed and finished. And now, well, here we are still with a total at 211, 211 and a half. We haven't seen anybody get to 205. Dallas hasn't scored 100 points yet. The Celtics haven't gotten to 110 points yet. But at least the side seems to be a little more realistic here with about a pick 'em or Boston -1. It's been a fascinating trip in the marketplace in this series. Pretty unique, would you say?
Yes, and what's interesting is that the highest scoring game of the three, like you said, was 205 in game 3. But when I do my mathematical rescore based on the pace, that was actually the slowest of the 3 games. So it was the highest score of the 3 games, but it was actually the slowest pace, the fewest free throw attempts, because once again, there were less possessions. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously the under is 3-0. Boston straight up is 3-0. So it's been a pretty good correlated parlay as Boston in the under. And it's not a shock. They're a great defensive team, but they're also a huge 3-point shooting team. And it's not a fluke that they've had the 3-point edge every game. But look at the 3 playoff games. Boston was plus 27 in game 1. They won by 18. They were plus 12 in game 2 from 3-point range. They won by 7. They were plus 24 the other night in game 3, and they only won by 7. So you're like, wow, that 3-point random variance Dallas is due. The problem is they're taking a lot more threes, so it's not a fluke that Boston's going to outscore them from 3. And they also, the game Dallas had to get Joe in hindsight was game 2. They held Boston to 26% shooting from 3, and they still couldn't win that game. That's the one that came back to bite them because, don't forget, they had a 13-point lead in the first half. They went on a 20-2 run in the second half to get to within 1. You know, Dallas, had they gotten game 2, could very well be up 2-1. At worst, down 1-2, but now it's 0-3. And as you said, it's 156-0 that this series is over at some point, but maybe not tonight.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, Steve. I mean, it's funny. Pretentious Prodigy in the chat room's going, boy, this is not the last NBA tip-off show. It's kind of hard to think that we are getting we're playing into next week just because the Celtics have proven they're better by a mile. And Merrill, you mentioned it. This is a math problem for Dallas. If you look at just the last game, Steve, and you go down the stat sheet and you look at shots made, free throws, rebounds, you're going, wow, this is a pretty even game. Well, until you get to the 3-point column where Boston took 46 3-pointers and Dallas took 25. And the Celtics haven't even shot well from 3 in this game. The amount of missed wide open threes, Merrill, has been over the top. So we can talk about regression and variance for Dallas and their shooters all day, but we know Boston's capable of 40, 41% in a game. And if that happens and you outshoot a team by almost, 23, 24, 3, how in the hell is Dallas going to win a game short of Boston shooting themselves in the foot?
Right. I gave those margins 39 and 24 is 63. They're plus 63 points in the 3 games from 3-point range. You're like, wow, that's insane. It's random. It's variable. Dallas should be a better team. They're outscoring them from 2. But then you look at the 3-point shots taken. Game 1 plus 15, game 2 plus 13, game 3 plus 21 attempts. So it's not a fluke that they're outscoring them from 3. It's their game, and it's a bad matchup for Dallas. I talked about this last week. I had my strongest play of the NBA season in game 1. And by the way, comment below. We read all the comments. We reply back. My game 4 video comments are cracking me up, Joe, because every video there's been 1 or 2 random people who's like, Merrill's gotten every game wrong in the finals. He's been on Dallas. I'm like, my God, my strongest play of the NBA season was Boston game one, my only 5% play of the season. Pretty transparent. Go back to WagerTalk.com. It's in the last 20 right now. So not sure how I've gotten this series wrong. And I also did, by the way, as you know, a series preview last week on why Boston would win the series and why it was a bad matchup. So everyone's watching the same videos, seeing the same plays, and there's still one or two knuckleheads that are like, he's gotten every game wrong so far. It just shows you can't try to deal with 100% of the people. But my point is, I liked Boston coming into this series, not only because they were the better team, but because they do live and die by the three. And Dallas's weakness is three-point defense. And it's not a fluke. They got better in February when they picked up P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford, two power forwards to go along with Lively, a 7'2" center. Their interior defense is very stout, but Boston doesn't score down low. And Porzingis has been out. He's out again. Boston wins and lives and dies by the three. And Dallas doesn't defend the three well. And, oh, yeah, let's look at Luka. Let's look at Kyrie. They're not out there hustling on defense. So I don't think anything changes in that regard. And it's not a fluke that Boston is plus 63 from three-point range. I think the big question in this game, Joe, is does Dallas show up? It's hard to imagine they got much left after not only blowing a 13-point lead, but then coming back from a 21-point deficit to cut it within one and then not winning. And on the surface, that seems like it's do or die. But I will say this, Boston is very public. In the video, my video, once again, I read all the comments. Game one, everybody loved the Mavericks. They loved them in the series. I went contrarian. And now everybody today, I'm telling you, maybe one or two out of 100 are saying Dallas. Everybody is saying the Celtics have this one. And if you check the Wager Talk live odds screen, it's been pick 'em all day. It's now Dallas -1 for the consensus line. I know it's hard to make a case for Dallas here, but I'm telling you right now, if you want to fade the public, the Mavericks are the way to do it tonight.
Yeah. No, I do think they show up, and it is cliche, Merril, but I think they show up. If you're going to bet them, you got to bet them early. And if you're going to bet anything early, you got to bet Luka early, guys. He has absolutely dominated his prop, Merril, with first quarter points in every game. And thinking about it, it makes sense. He's taking those pain med shots before the game starts. So he is going to be his most effective, his most energetic early in the games. There's no wonder why he disappears in the fourth quarter, Merril, and in third, fourth. He's, as that shot wears off, guess what? So does his effectiveness pretty much. And so does the pain starts to set in. So if Dallas, and I said this last game too, if Dallas doesn't do it early, they're not doing it late. And that held out to be true. As it is, that full game, I believe the first half odds in the last game were the same as the full game odds, and they still were only able to win by a point. And again, Boston didn't shoot very well. If it wasn't for Tatum, we already know the bench is much better. Look at Hauser and what he did. I mean, hell, they rolled out Tillman, and he made a three. I mean, the bench is outplaying Dallas as well. If you look at them, I think it's a pick 'em in the first half. Is it Dallas early or just forget about it? Like, what are we looking at here with them?
It's not only a pick 'em, it's -0.5. I even see some -1s out there for Dallas first half. And those same books have pick 'em, and there's even some +1s full game. So you're exactly right. And let's talk about that first half a little bit more and how the cat is out of the bag on that angle. Over the let's go back like 3 seasons right after the COVID bubble. The 20 years before that, if you had blindly played the first half when a team was back at home down 0-2 in game 3, it was like a 67% play against the spread over like 120 games. And when something works like that and people start talking about it, the odds makers make the adjustment. It's below 500 the last 3 years. And game 3 was a textbook example of why. As you mentioned, they only won by 1. The line was like 1.5. Let's talk about the first quarter. That was actually my top recommendation on Dallas. I stayed off the side in game 3, but I did in the video mention if you're going to play them, like you said, play them early. And I said the first quarter is probably the best option. They were -1.5 first quarter, which was the same as basically the game line almost. What happens? They win the first quarter by 1. You talk about a bad beat. They were up by 6 with 40 seconds to go, and they had the ball at one point. Up 6 with 40 seconds to go, and they only ended up winning by 1 the quarter. And you still would have covered tonight because now it's a half. And anytime the last 20 years, it would have been a half. But because of the inflation, because everyone's onto this trend, it was 1.5, and it made the difference. So it's something to keep in mind next year with all these 0-2 game 3s is that you're not smarter than everybody now playing the first half, first quarter because you're paying a tax. It's a little bit of a less of a tax tonight. And I do agree with you, Joe. Like, I don't see a scenario in which Dallas is down at the half and they all of a sudden rally the troops and Luka becomes better in the second half and they look to save the season. So everything you said makes a lot of sense. Dallas early and Luka early as well.
What about the fact, and let me throw this angle out here because we're just trying to leave no stone unturned here, guys, because this could very well be, in all likelihood, the last NBA game. So I do think there are some angles to consider here. What about the fact that this is finally, for the first time, it feels like in forever, in which we're actually back to like a normal playoff routine for these offenses, right? Only a day's rest in between. The argument, I guess, can be made that, you know, all of these days off and the games and these days off in between, there really hasn't been anything normal about the schedule of when they actually play games. And I guess it would make sense why we haven't seen Boston shoot all that great. Volume is what has won them these games. Is there any credence to the idea that maybe a little normalcy now, back to what they had been used to, that the offenses can get back on the court and maybe we do get more scoring here tonight?
Yeah, keep in mind, Boston shot 38% in game one, 37% in game three from three-point range. They average about 38.5 for the season. So they're slightly below average, and it should be a little higher because Dallas is a bad three-point defense. So let's say 39 is what they should shoot. They shot 38, 37. It's really that game two that was the bad one, as we talked about, the 25.5%. And that's why I went back earlier. I was like, that's the game Dallas had to win. And that's going to be the one that got away from them, that haunts them here. It is a normal routine here on out. They play, well, with that said, they travel after this game, and then game 5 would be Monday, so it'd be 2 days off again. I think Boston wants to win it, but then again, would they really be disappointed if they got to win it at home in game 5? Maybe it's not, do the Mavericks show up? I think the bigger question is, does Boston show up? And I know that sounds silly when they can clinch the championship, but they have had a tendency to take games off. And when you're a three-point shooting team and that happens, it can get ugly. So it's probably a combination of both. You know, does Dallas show up and does Boston take it serious? Because I'll tell you what, Joe, I don't normally say lay 1-50, but right now the consensus odds are 55-1 or 1-55. The Westgate has some liability on the Mavericks. Arthur Caesar has talked about this on WagerTalk today the last few weeks. They've got the shortest price on the WagerTalk live odds screen right now. You can get minus 5,000, which is lay 50 to win 1 at the Superbook on Boston. That's a good bet. I mean, it's not probably a great money management bet, but like you said, they're 156-0, and I know some of those are bigger blowout series. Dallas is not winning this series. They might not even win tonight. It's 50-50. Laying 1-50 is not a terrible bet. You get that money back probably Monday night at the latest.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think we should consider at some particular point here the opportunity to back some of these Dallas Mavericks, because I don't think they're going to lay down, Merril, right? I mean, they had an opportunity to lay down in game 3, and they were up by 21, Boston, at one point after that third there. I mean, they laid it all out there. The problem is when Sam Hauser delivers off the bench for Boston, when Tillman comes in and delivers and gives you quality defense, the bench players for Dallas they're out there. It seems like it's a cardio workout more than anything else. They bring absolutely nothing to the table here. And can we count on Hauser and a Tillman? If you're Boston, are you changing anything at this point? Probably not. So if you take those Hauser buckets away and Tillman, doesn't play as effectively on defense, are we looking at more points for Dallas? Because I'm seeing a lot of guys in the chat room looking at fading Dallas's team total here tonight, which, again, they haven't gotten to 100, Merril. So if you're going to give me a team total of 102, 103, 104, somewhere in there, are they going to get to 100? What are the chances of the bench guys for Boston balling out like they just did in that game 3?
Yeah, I mean, 7 straight playoff games before the finals, they'd had 100 or more. So they're obviously capable of getting there. But then again, Boston is a better defensive team. Although, I don't know, Minnesota was considered the best defense in the NBA. I always say that tongue in cheek. But, Minnesota, they still scored 100 or more in every game in that series. I think Porzingis is somebody we got to bring up because you said change anything. why would you play him tonight? He's not healthy.
Oh,
They're up
no.
3-0. They won without him. But the bench was really thin without Porzingis. In fact, Hauser and Tillman played 14 and 11 minutes, and Pritchard played 11. Nobody else played. They only had 3 subs the entire game. And you mentioned the shorter rest. Maybe that's a disadvantage here, only one day off when the guys played so many minutes. I mean, you look at Holiday, everybody, all starters played 41 minutes or more, except for one guy, and that's Al Horford, who played 36 and a half. Al Horford minutes, that's like 80 because he is old and slow.
That's true.
He had that travel. That was the worst NBA. You're traveling when they call it travel at a pivotal moment in an NBA game. And he looked perplexed on top of that. I think it's because they don't know what a travel is anymore because it's never called. But yeah, think about that. I mean, every starter played over 41 and a half minutes except for Horford, who played 36 and a half, which in horse minutes is like 80. So they could be a little fatigued. And that's another reason, maybe you jump on Dallas early. But then again, could we see Dallas pull another monster comeback? I do think, Joe, when it's 0-2 and you're down 21, you got some energy. If it's 0-3 and you're down 21, I just don't see that happening.
I also think it's probably fair to say, Merril, that it's, all of that failure by Boston with this team over the last 5 days. We've kind of seen it with the Florida Panthers in the hockey game too, right? All the little things that plagued them a year ago when they were in the final, all the things that went wrong for Boston in the finals, whether it be the conference or the finals itself. This feels like a team on a mission. I don't see them taking their foot off the gas. The idea that, they'll just want to go home and win it in front. I don't see this team wants to be considered one of the all-time greatest over the last decade. Like they don't get the respect. They don't feel they're getting the respect. So nothing like a sweep to help that narrative here. I don't think they're going to leave anything left. I think they're going to empty it tonight too to get this thing done. What do you think?
Yeah. Let me be straight. I don't think like they're going to be like, oh, let's win it at home. I think they want to win it. They want to get the championship. That's not going to even be a factor. But it's definitely not the worst case scenario. And it's the same for Florida. The hockey is eerily similar. You've got a 0-3 situation for the home team, yet Edmonton tomorrow is a slight favorite on the money line. So very similar, Dallas and Edmonton. And I had Ralph Michaels run some numbers for me when I did my standalone video last night, which is on WagerTalk TV right now, my Game 4 breakdown. And Ralph did some great charts for me, sent them over. I basically asked you to 0-3 situations. And what jumped out to me, Joe, was that when you look at home teams down 0-3, over the last 20 years, it's been a losing play. But over the last 3 to 4 years, it's actually been a winning play with quality teams. And what's really interesting is if you took out the 9 biggest dogs at home down 0-3, they went 0-9 straight up in ATS. It's actually a winning play for everyone else. And there's been a handful of favorites and small dogs in this price range. In fact, at 2.5 or less over the last several years, going all the way back to 2012, the last 12 years, Ralph points out, these teams are 8-6 straight up, 9-5 against the spread. So teams in this price range, like Dallas tonight, down 0-3 at home, have actually gone 8-6 straight up the last 14, going back to 2012, courtesy of Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com. So there is some backtesting proof that this series is not over tonight, at least.
No, there is opportunity, I think, here, guys, depending on which way you want to go. Lord Farquaad in the house, talking about Tatum on the road. If it ain't broke, and there's a few of these props here, Merril. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Tatum, 9.5 boards. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. He finally, broke through on the point prop in that last game. But a guy like him, I believe a guy like also Holiday, who has also just been absolutely phenomenal, except for the last game, 10.5 rebounds and assists is his number. He has hit the over in every game except for last game, game 3. He finished with 4 boards and 5 assists, but he plays 42 minutes. To those kinds of props, I think, for Dallas with guys that have been consistent like the Holidays and like the Tatums, they're going to play 40-plus minutes, so they're certainly going to get the opportunities. If it ain't broke, why fix it in the prop betting market, especially when it comes to the guys like Tatum and Holiday?
Yeah, I'm never in a hurry to play unders, with star players. It's overs or pass for guys like Irving and Doncic and Brown and Tatum. They're the 4 that were the favorites to win the MVP. They were all at really single digits. Irving was 20-1. Everybody else Brown was 5-1. Tatum and Doncic was even money, 3-1. Jaylen Brown, it looks like it's his MVP to lose. And what's interesting about that is I think it's mainly based on points scored, which I get. That's important. But, Tatum has had a double-double. He had a double-double in the first two games. Brown has yet to have one in this series. He didn't have a double-double in game three. And like you said, Joe, he had 31 points after just 18 and 16. So, if you think Dallas could win this game tonight, you probably have more value with the Tatum MVP because that gives him 2 games versus 1 to get back on track and to bump the stats. Whereas if they finish it tonight, it's going to most likely be Jaylen Brown.
Yeah. Is there any doubt in your mind Brown is the MVP here, Merril? Am we missing something with that? No. The guy's an absolute
if it finishes
closer.
Tonight.
If they
I'm telling you right now, though, that's the thing, though. And look, the odds are 50-50 that this series ends tonight. So there's a 50% chance we get a game 5. And yes, I know Tatum's points aren't there, but he's had a double-double in 2 of the 3 games. If he has another monster game tonight, he's had 16, 18, and 31. Jaylen Brown's had so far in the 3 games, 22, 21, 30. So Brown was slightly better in games 1 and 2, but if Tatum gets 2 more games, there might be some value with him now. But once again, it correlates to the fact you have to think Dallas wins tonight. So a lot of moving parts there.
Yeah, and a ton of moving parts in that one. I think we can also agree they haven't moved Luka, still 32.5. Kyrie was 23.5 in game 3. He's now 24.5 after finally figuring it out. What is your take on Derek Lively? Because people seem to be done with him. 8.5 for his point prop here. It just feels like Gafford's a better option. What do you think here, especially from a scoring perspective here? Lively going to get double digits in points? I doubt it, right, at this point?
I'll tell you one thing about Lively, though, is if you ever get his shooting percentage over anything below 100, take it.
So true.
Yes. What was he like? He was 16 for 16, I think, in the Western Conference Finals.
Yes.
He missed one of those games, but he didn't miss a shot overall.
Yep.
And then so far in this series, he was 1 for 1, 1 for 3, not a good game too, and then 5 for 6, including some big dunks there in the fourth quarter. It's basically dunk or nothing for him. Andy Lang talked about him on WagerTalk today, so I recommend going back checking that out. He likes all 3 over. Teddy leaned more towards rebounds over. But I thought Andy brought up a good point, and I agree with, is that they used Lively more down the stretch. When they made that comeback in the fourth quarter, he was a part of it, and Gafford was not. In fact, Gafford only ended up with 16 minutes, despite starting the game and going perfect 3 for 3 from the field. He only had 6 points, 16 minutes, whereas Lively came off the bench and played 30 minutes and had 11 points. So I would think they're going to play Lively more, at least initially early in the game, and we'll see if that pays off or not.
Some questions in the chat. Joshua is saying, listen, he lives in Dallas. Can we please just get 1 win? So, yeah, I mean, you got a pretty good opportunity to do that tonight, Joshua. Kyrie over 24, Wrath of Raider in the house. Should you do it? Should you leave it alone? If you're backing Dallas, then I would back up Kyrie, because if he ain't there again tonight, it's all she wrote for Dallas. So I think if you're looking at Dallas at getting one, then Kyrie's got to be a part of that, and he's got to have over 24 points at this state here, Merril. What do you think?
Yeah, especially if Luka's looks more and more banged up, which is starting to look that way. My concern with Kyrie, though, is he's so inconsistent. Tatum and Kyrie props, both their points are very difficult because they can have these monster games and then put up single digits almost. Like Kyrie had 12 and 16 in the first 2, and then he had 35. He had more points in game 3 than the first 2 combined by like 20% more. The other problem is that you're paying a tax now. He's been around 22.5, 23 in almost every playoff game. Now it's 24.5. So it's a premium. But once again, I'm not looking to play him under, but I'd be cautious. I'm hesitant on Kyrie after a big game. The only other 2 times, going back to the OKC series, about the middle of that series, the only other 2 times he's had over 30 points are the 3 times he followed up with 20, 16, and 12 the next 3 games. So he's been a real zigzag guy. And if that's the case, he's probably going to zag.
Yes, we got also a big shout out here tonight. Those of you in Las Vegas, apparently Lord Farquaad wants everyone to know he's been telling you that Boston is sweeping this series. So if you actually happen to see a black man on the strip wearing a Paul Pierce jersey and he's got a broom in his hand, send him a shout out tonight. Lord Farquaad will be in the house here rooting on the Boston Celtics here tonight. John Finley is looking at the alt market here. which is interesting, Merrill. I think he found a market in which you could get a couple of points here with the total as well as the Celtics. He, in fact, got Celtics plus 4.5 and over 202.5 at just about even money, a little better than even money there. What do you think of the alt market here for this spot if you're convinced Boston is going to get it done?
You'll like this. I did in-game live on Sports Grid the other night with Scott Wetzel and Dave Sharapan during Game 3, and Wetzel had made a bet pregame on the Mavericks lead by 10, win the game, Celtics lead by 10, win the game, and they were both like 4 or 5 to 1. And of course, the Mavericks had a 13-point lead early, so that was already, if they win, they're there. So as he's rooting them on as I'm doing the show with them, and Boston in the third quarter briefly hit 10 and went right back down to 8, and then I was off by the time they got up by 21. But he had a nice little, guaranteed payout there by mid-fourth quarter. I don't know if that'll work again, but there's definitely some alt market ways to play these games, stuff like that. And, look, Boston's led by 21, 14, and 29 in the 3 games. So hard to imagine they probably won't have a double-digit lead at some point. They were up by 16 and 28 in the 2 regular season meetings. With that said, Dallas had never led by more than 7 in the first 4 meetings this year until that 13-point lead in the first half of Game 3, which once again shows how powerful that 0-2 home team Game 3 angle is in the first half. And it still didn't cash because, once again, the inflation has been priced in. Whether Dallas comes out with that kind of energy, perhaps, but I really feel like the spot was probably Game 3 for that angle.
Shout out to Cannonball in the house, Merrill, making fun of your 13 and 14-year-old teams here, saying you should be at practice right now instead of talking NBA. Yeah, he is a little bitter because
I'm not. This is a true story, Joe. You'll like this. So I was able to put my son and daughter on the same co-rec team. It's the first time in their lives they've played together, probably the only time. So I bumped my 12-year-old up to the 13-14, my son, and Cannon's still 11, 12. So he is very upset that I'm not coaching the 12U and I'm doing 14U because he cannot be on my team. So, yes, Cannon is very unhappy with Coach Steve right now. True story.
Cannonball in the Shorts chat room is pissed off here, people. Yo, Coach Merrill. He wants to know, not that he wishes your 13, 14-year-old team any loss, but he seems a little bit bitter there in the chat room there. A life in Vegas, yes. We went a little earlier here today because Merrill has coaching duties coming up, and we wanted to get to you guys before this. Not for Cannonball, though. Exactly. Cannonball, you're not included here, my man. Hang out with your 11, 12-year-olds. Leave the 13, 14-year-olds to their own. S. Warrior hanging out somewhere along the line. Not here. He will definitely not make this show in time. I can promise you.
I was just going to say, Joe. I have a big wager on the over there. That's why we went early, to be honest with you. It was just so I could catch that last ticket.
That's correct. We definitely think for sure that S. Warrior is still going to show up and be like, where is everyone? I don't understand what's going on here. What do we do? A couple of other ones that we've got in this one, Merrill. What happens, and it was a question in the chat too, that the amount of misses that Boston has had with wide open threes, because it appears that when the Celtics drive, Dallas has no answer for them dishing it out and finding. When you got 5 guys that can hit threes, they have no answer on how to cover any of these guys. Luke is not guarding anybody. Kyrie's not guarding. So guys are wide open, and they still haven't had that one game where they're going to make you pay with those wide open threes yet. This could be, if this is going to be a game, and let's say we get to the 4th and it's another Dallas down by 20, it's kind of hard to count. Are we going to look at nothing but garbage time minutes at the end of this game? Maybe just the first half over is the way to look if you think that this is going to be a battle early on in the game?
Well, I was going to say, you're talking me into an over 211. And that line, by the way, is down to 211 now on the WagerTalk Live odds screen. We're seeing some 210 and a halves at several books. Now, a couple of them are the sharper books, but it would be over a pass for me. My rescore based on the pace in games 1 and 2 was 214, 217, right in line with the numbers. And it was only 204 and a half in game 3. And I actually liked the over the other night. But very few fouls called. They only had 30 free throw attempts versus 44 and 38 in the first 2. And, guess who's the crew chief tonight? Scott Foster.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, over a pass for me. And I think some of the points you're talking about Boston being open due to hit some. And if it is blowout central, I mean, yeah, it slows down the pace a little bit, and it also maybe calls less fouls. But I think garbage time can help the over also because it becomes a playground. Let's pad our stats. So yeah, I think over 211 has some reason to look at it. It's obviously a big drop from the previous games, and my rescore doesn't really show any value. But I think situationally with Scott Foster, some other X factors, the over would probably be my lean on the total.
So shout out to AOD's call for Pistons in 5 next year. I love that, AOD. Stay real, my man. Stay real. Luka double-double is what we're getting there. They actually blasted Tatum's double-double. He was minus 140 last game, now minus 165. Luka is minus 260 for a double-double. So I think they think that is going to be pretty much a given. The only other guy, what about Jaylen Brown at plus money for a double-double here? Or even better, how about Derek White for a long shot or Holiday here? The only guys that you know for a fact with Luka and Tatum, in all likelihood, it's rinse and repeat. But who is another guy, Merril, that might actually come through for us here? Because everyone else has lost money.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to do a double-double, but he actually could get there. A play-on guy for me for Dallas, I mentioned this in my standalone video, is P.J. Washington over points.
Oh, yes.
And the logic here, Joe, is that Irvin and Doncic did everything the other night. In fact, to put this in perspective, they took 55 of the 86 shot attempts. They scored 62 of the 99 points. That's like 63% of the points. So somebody else has to get involved. And then on top of that, if you're Boston, all you got to do is focus on stopping those two guys. The third best option is P.J. Washington, and he was only 3 for 9 shooting. He still got to 13 points, right under his total, and he had 8 rebounds. So he could get to a double-double if he gets enough rebounds. That'd be the only way it happens. But once again, I think P.J. Washington points over is worth a look. He could be a sneaky candidate as well for a double-double. And then another guy I think could have a big game for Boston is Drew Holiday. He actually put himself in the running for the MVP discussion after Game 2 when he had that monster 26-point performance. And he was as high at 50-1 at that point. But after 9 points in Game 3, this is going to have to go 5, at least 6 games for him to get back in the MVP discussion. But I think he could still have a good Game 4 tonight.
Yeah, I kind of like, I really do kind of like Holiday here tonight because this is the kind of game in a closeout spot, Merril. Defensively, he shows up. Because let's face it, he's the one guy on that team, right, that it's been there and done that and has actually closed out the finals. These other guys, who knows what we're going to get. But there is a chance that Luka and Kyrie and they come to the realization this could be their last basketball game. I know Luka told the media yesterday that he promises that he's going to be playing as loose and as unuptight as possible. And the only reason you get to that point is because you realize it's over. So now you just play the game, you have fun, you don't care what that could be the scary part here, which is another reason that I swear the over is probably the best bet in this game because they're not worrying about it. It's not a do or dies. They've already come to the realization it's over. And guys that usually come to that realization, boy, oh boy, that final game, they usually have the game of the year. If that's the case, this game's flying over the total, especially with Scotty Foster out there, if it's a close game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and by the way, I had Ralph run those numbers, Ralph Michaels, on the home teams down 0-3, going all the way back, really for a couple of decades. The under is 38-35, so it's really a wash. It's like a 1-point margin of victory. But once again, when you get to these tighter scenarios where you have a quality team, 2.5-point dog or favorite like Dallas tonight, it's actually 13-12 to the over and 7-7 the last 12 years. So they are a little bit higher scoring when you have a competitive game, which is kind of counterintuitive. You think it'd be the other way around. But I like what you said. When I hear that you say he's going to play loose and carefree, that's playground basketball. That's what you look for with an over.
Yeah, and he swears that he's not going to care about the refs. He's not going to, bet him early. Bet him early because that pain med is going to wear off come the third and fourth quarter, so bet him early.
What also helps the over, Joe, is when you're underneath the basket on your butt bitching about a non-call and the other team has a 5-on-4 break the other way for an easy layup, which happened a couple times in the second half. So that also helps the over if Luka's playing that way. Him fouling out obviously didn't help the over, didn't help out. And let's keep that in mind, too. If Luka doesn't foul out, they might win that game. It might even go over still, might go to overtime. So that was crazy, too. And that was not Scott Foster. He's game 4 tonight, and you would think the league wanted Dallas in game 3. First playoff game he's ever fouled out. It was either the second or third time in his career in any game he's fouled out. That was pretty bizarre.
I'll tell you this, though, is 8.5 points in the first quarter, Merril. He has dominated in the first quarter in this series. But if you go back to the following games after a loss with him, Luka's averaging almost 13 first quarter points. And he's already exceeded the 8.5 in 5 of the last 7. So, he is a guy that usually is the catalyst for bouncing back for Dallas after a loss. He's hit this in every game here so far. He's gone over this early. And you got to think that pain med shot gets in there right before he's feeling good. 8.5 is not a lot for him in the first quarter. Almost feel like they're going to need him to keep doing that until somebody else can show that they can play alongside him.
Can you imagine how good he could be if he was healthy in a little bit better shape? He'd be unstoppable because he basically is unstoppable when he's healthy and not tired, which is the first quarter. 8.5 sounds like a big number to me, but then you start talking about it. I was like, there's no way you play that anything other than over. By the way, here's my prediction. We can fast forward to this in like 7 years from now or rewind. But
shoot.
After watching Luka the other night, he's a little heavier and more out of shape than I realized. He's one of those guys that, like at age 31 or 32, like 6-7 years from now, he's going to have a 20-point season, and the very next year he's going to be done. And it's just like he's just going to disappear because the minute he loses a step, he's not in great shape. He's injury prone. He's going to just disappear. So he's going to end up probably not being one of the all-time greats because of that, which is a shame because he probably at his best is really unstoppable, like you're saying in the first quarter. But I could see that happening. He's just one of those guys you can see just fading overnight all of a sudden, like in 5-6 years.
Yeah, he's like, the kid that was on the high school. He had all sorts of, he was a little chubby, but, guy had amazing touch, had a great shot. And then you're like, he'll lose that eventually. Like, he never loses it. He's still at the buffet. He's like, what in the world is going on? And you can't. Same thing for, Mr. Champion there in Denver, except he looks like he's in a lot better shape. He used to be like that too, was he not? The Joker. He doesn't look like that anymore.
Yeah, that's a fun rabbit hole to go down. Once this series ends, either tonight or Monday, and you're jonesing for some NBA pro basketball the next couple months, go to YouTube and find some of Jokic's clips overseas as a teenager. Really a late teenager, like almost college age. He was not a dominant player. It's remarkable how good he's become. But he's in better shape now, like you're saying, Joe, than back then. He was a little bit chunky and out of shape back then. It's the opposite. And the Shaquille O'Neal, that Netflix series on Shaquille was fantastic. I actually only watched the first one. I haven't watched the others, but it showed his whole high school thing. He could even make the team in Germany on an Air Force base in high school, which is insane. He basically couldn't walk. He was so awkward. So, and Luka's a guy that's been playing since like 13 professionally. So we joke about him turning, 25 or 26 the other month. I was like, good God, man, I thought he was like 35 years old. So that's another reason, like, I'm telling you, man, at 31 or 32, he's going to be a 50-year-old. He's going to be done like overnight. Jokic seems very smart the way he plays. He flows. It looks effortless. He doesn't ever look like he's hurt. Luka's nonstop, and he took some bad shots also. Didn't shoot well from 3, by the way. Keep that in mind in that game also. And that's why Kyrie had to do all the heavy lifting. But, I like where you're going with the first quarter. It'll be very interesting to see how those horse tranquilizers work tonight in the first quarter.
Toradol's a beautiful drug, but it wears off and that pain starts to kick in. So a first half everything. And I know, was it Free Rent showing up in the chat room? Welcome in, man. First half over or under? What are you all thinking? I think the consensus here is that we are going to get overs here. I think the points are going to come, certainly. And the big question is Dallas going to score enough to get this thing over? What's the first half total right now, Merril?
Well, it's 108.
We're looking at it.
Here's the problem. You're looking at 108 versus 211. So they're saying 108/103 for the second half. But then again, all three games have stayed under 205 or less. Game 1 had 105 at the half. Game 2, 105. Game 3, 101. So that tax is going to make a difference once again. The odds makers realize the first half should be higher scoring. They're making you pay a premium.
So if that's the case, 53.5 Celtics team total in the first half. The Mavericks are also 54.5 in the first half here. So either one of those. Whoever you think is going to come out. Dallas is not going to win this game, Merril. I think it's fair to say if they have 48 points, 49 points at the break.
Well, Dallas hasn't scored 100 in this series yet, like you said, but they've had 51 and 50 the last two games at the half. So they have been a better first half team. But then again, what's that correlate to? Luka Doncic, right? He's been a better first half player. So not a mystery. Boston had 63, 54, and 50 in the first half of the three games so far. But I would expect Dallas, if they're going to have anything, they're going to come out strong. And it's another thing, too, about the pain meds wearing off. It's one thing when you're down 0-2 at home. If you're down 0-3 at home, you're pained. You're like, do you really want to go through this and travel all the – and Dallas, we talk about Boston wanting to go home and win it. Not so sure Dallas feels like flying to Boston to lose it either. So if they're down in the second half of the fourth quarter, how do you not just kind of mail it in at that point?
John Finley all in on Obi Toppin over his points here tonight. Yes, that's good stuff there. That's a flashback. We appreciate that, my man here. Also, it is $5, I believe, Merril, Customer Appreciation Day. Might you have anything locked and loaded for folks over at your page at WagerTalk?
Yes, my top recommendation in this game is actually for my clients. It's just $5. It's normally $25 for a play. It's an 80% discount with $5 Friday. But more importantly, I've got a free baseball play. I posted a free play in the Pirates-Rockies game for everybody. So it's $0 Friday for that free baseball play, and then it's $5 Friday for the NBA best bet. All seriousness, so you really should consider a direct subscription. You don't have to get it tonight. Get the $5 play, that's fine. But then Saturday or Sunday, pick up the 7-day for $77 before it expires. I average about 2 to 3 plays a day, so that's about $5 a play. So the one play tonight for $5 is great, but you can get the whole next week for basically $5 a play with that 77 7-day special. Or the buy 2 weeks, get another 16 days for free. The 1 month special is even less. That's about $3 to $4 a play. Check all those out along with that free baseball play Friday. Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com.
All right, so this is, guys, could very well be the last NBA tip-off show. Have Cash finally showing up here, Merril. It'll only be a matter of time before Kelsey has the chill ready on that Chardonnay, and she'll be in here with a straw. Also, in Instagram, pleasure to see you guys drinking it up on a Friday. Always a pleasure here. Chris Ostro in the house. Good to see you. Chris believes that they ought to forbid beer in the Dallas arena so Luka doesn't drink it. Oh, that is a beer. By the way, those are beer handles with Luka. The man can enjoy his drinks, no doubt about that. Give all of the late stragglers in here a show best bet they were asking for, Merril, on the way out. So what would you advise these folks to go with here tonight?
Yeah, this series is such a blowout that we started the NBA show early, so most people would miss the Game 4 show. I thought that was very appropriate. But once again, a little bit of a scheduling conflict. I'm filling in today, and I got to run, so we had to start a little early. But that's why you hit subscribe, you hit the bell for instant notifications. And you know that we started a little bit earlier here on Wager Talk TV. And if you're joining us on the replay, comment below. I'll be chiming in tonight to check the comments, answer any questions you might have in the post-show comments below. But mentioned this in my standalone video, and if you want to deep dive into Game 4, check that out here after the show, my Game 4 preview here on Wager Talk TV. But for the Mavericks, P.J. Washington over 13.5 points, and for the Celtics, Drew Holiday over 12.5 points. Holiday's had 12 points or more, Joe, in the 9 past games until his off Game 3. I thought that price was very cheap, and he's a big-time playoff performer. So I look for Holiday to bounce back tonight over points. And then I think Washington's going to be that third option. They can't rely on Irvin and Doncic. I don't think the Celtics are going to allow them to rely just on those two. And that's going to open things up for P.J. Washington, who was just 3 for 9 shooting and still had 13 points the last game. I think he gets over 13.5. Holiday gets over 12.5 tonight for game 4.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to go Luka over first quarter, 8.5 points, guys. If it ain't broke, we are not fixing it here. That Toradol will kick in. He swears that he is going to be playing loose and ready to roll here. No pressure, and there shouldn't be because the series over and everyone knows it. So expect him to come out firing, and I would definitely look at the first half over and give Scotty Foster a chance to get in there. And by the way, Merril, have you noticed the lack of whistles and how they are beating the living crap out of one another in there? It's been kind of amazing. Tony Brothers and some of these other crews have allowed them to get away with what they have gotten away, and it's absolutely crazy as far as that goes. So there you got it here, guys. We do have, and he is stiff as a board without a doubt, we do have a game 4. We don't know if we'll have a game 5. In all likelihood, this could very well be the last episode of the NBA Tip-Off Show this season. But we do want to send a shout out, if it is, to all of you guys, AOD, John Finley, John Peterson, Big Daddy, Have in the house, A Life in Vegas. We can go down the list. Lord Farquaad, who again, he'll be wearing the Paul Pierce jersey on the strip, walking around with a broom. If you see him here tonight when the Celtics win, make sure you send out a shout out to Lord Farquaad. We certainly appreciate him. Guava in the house over here, Darden, Wrath of Raider, Cannonball, get your ass to practice. Those 11 and 12-year-olds ain't going to work themselves. Exactly right. Best of luck here, guys. If there is a game 5, Merril, I believe that's what, Monday?
Monday night. Yeah, it'll be Monday night back in Boston. So 50% chance you get to see Joe Ranieri again, and a 50% chance you get to see me on a game 5 preview video. So click subscribe and click the bell for an instant alert, damn it.
Yep. Get out of here, Merril. You got those kids ain't going to coach themselves. We appreciate it. All right, A Life in Vegas, appreciate it. Growy Caps, appreciate it there. John Finley, again, you guys are the best. If it is the last time we'll see you, make sure you do hit that bell, though, and get notified, because you never know when we might pop up with a new show or a new episode or new info that you guys need. That's what it is all about. Hit that subscribe button. By the way, if you haven't subscribed, we're 200 away from 160K. So please help us get there. That would be fantastic of it. And don't forget, guys, tomorrow, another edition of Last Call, 11 a.m. Kelly Stewart will be back. We've got U.S. Open to go over. We've got an NHL Game 4 sweep to happen. Did I say that? I did. We've got Major League Baseball. We got Euros. We got all sorts of things happening here. So make sure that you come back and join us again tomorrow for another edition, 11 a.m. Eastern, for Last Call. But until then, Chris, we appreciate it. You guys are the best. Reek, always a pleasure, guys. It's been a hell of an NBA season. We wish you guys nothing but the best of luck. Cash those tickets, and I promise you'll see us again. Until then, guys, good luck tonight. We'll talk again soon.